Excuse me, how much longer until I'm called? We called you just now. What? Startled by the receptionist's words, I hurried into the examination room, and there was my familiar husband. Why are you here? The blood drained from John's face. In his panic, he tried to kick me out of the room. Immediately after, an unbelievable scene came into my view. My name is Christy Thomas, 27 years old. I was raised as the older of two sisters. I work in corporate office management. 3 years ago, I got married and now live with my husband, John. We met in college, worked at the same part-time job, dated for 4 years, and got married. Even now, we maintain a relationship where we can talk about anything, just like friends. By the way, I'm currently 7 weeks pregnant. We wanted a child right after we got married, but it didn't happen easily. And after 2 years of fertility treatment, a new life is finally growing inside me. When I went to the OB-GYN alone, the gestational sac, which is the baby's growing room, was already visible, and the ultrasound photo even showed the tiny fetus. I haven't told John about the pregnancy yet. I wanted to surprise him. On the way back from the OB-GYN, I bought a cake and stopped at a supermarket to get ingredients for his favorite food. When I got home, I started cooking right away. A few hours later, John, who came home saying, "I'm home," widened his eyes when he saw the food on the table. "Wow, it's so luxurious today. There's even my favorite, beef stew." That's right. I thought we should have a party today. Huh? A party? Why all of a sudden? Actually, I went to the hospital today. Hospital? I handed the ultrasound photo I took out of my bag to John, who was looking anxious. Looking at it, he raised his face forcefully and stared at me. "Christy, is this... really? John, we're becoming parents. Really? We're going to be parents?" "Yes, it's true. Our baby has finally come to us." I'm just so surprised. I'm lost for words. I know, it doesn't feel real, does it? But it's true. Our baby is really growing inside me. Growing steadily. Oh my God. Everything seems to be growing fine. Together, John, we're finally becoming parents. With every word I say, the reality of it slowly sinks in. Tears start flowing from my eyes, and before I know it, I can't stop them. John must be really happy too. He hugs me tight, his eyes also brimming with tears. Over and over again, he says, "Thank you," with a grateful smile on his face. Ever since that day, John has been taking on even more of the household chores than before. We used to share the housework, but now he's taken over cleaning the bathroom because it's too dangerous for me. He's also been proactive about grocery shopping for heavy items like rice and water. But that's not all. In order to reduce my burden even a little bit, he started making appointments for my prenatal checkups on his own. He's been asking about my schedule and making my checkup appointments for me, since I'm not so good with using the internet. I've been experiencing mild morning sickness, but not enough to keep me bedridden, so I've continued to work as usual. When I get home, I make dinner and wait for John to come back. He's been working overtime a lot since about a year ago, and usually doesn't get home until after 9 p.m. This night, though, he didn't come home even when it was past 10 p.m. Whenever it gets past 9 p.m., he always calls, but tonight, there's no word from him. I try reaching out to him, but there's no response, so I wait for him anxiously. Then, just past 11 p.m., I hear the sound of the front door opening. I rushed over to greet him. "John, welcome home! I was worried because you didn't contact me." Sorry. Something came up. But you weren't supposed to have overtime today, right? Did something happen? No. Just got some unexpected work. His eyes are clearly avoiding mine. Something seems off about how he's speaking. An uneasy premonition gripped me, and I confronted him right away. "John, are you hiding something?" What are you talking about? I'm not hiding anything." "Then why won't you look me in the eye? If you have nothing to hide, you should be able to tell me where you were and what you were doing, right?" I told you! I got caught up with an unexpected job. Some screw-up by a junior. I had to step in and handle it. But even if that was the case, couldn't you have sent me a message like you usually do? I texted you several times. I even called you, didn't I? Well, it couldn't be helped. I was busy. I didn't have time to answer your calls. John, who was usually so composed, raised his voice and glared at me. This was the first time I had ever seen him like this, and it startled me. He continued ranting, panting, and out of breath. "After all I do, working late and then coming home to be doubted? What nerve! Is it fun for you, making a fool out of people like this?" What are you talking about? I'm not making a fool out of you. I'm just asking why you were late. I said it was because of overtime, didn't I? What more do you want? It's not about what I want or don't want. You didn't contact me like you usually do. That's why I thought it was strange. Oh, enough. You're being so stubborn. Is it because you're pregnant that you're having these intense delusions? What? Listen, Christy, when the time comes for you to give birth, you won't be able to work. And then who do you think is going to support us? Me, right? If you want to be supported, stop interfering in my work. John then left, throwing off his suit and going straight into the bath, after which he shut himself in our bedroom. What was left in the living room was the untouched dinner I had prepared. In front of the untouched side dishes, I was overwhelmed by indescribable emotions. Why? Why would he say things like that? All I did was point out that something felt off. To call it delusions? That's too harsh. Since that day, John began treating me coldly. It became normal for him to come home in the early hours of the morning, and the days when he would come home by 9 p.m., as he used to, became rare. In the midst of all this uncertainty, my pregnancy continued. John, who used to help out with anything and everything, no longer did any household chores, leaving it all to me. The strain of doing the housework while being careful not to exert too much force on my stomach gradually wore me down. Finally, unable to handle everything alone, I called my younger sister Karen. "Hey, Karen. Oh, sis! Long time no see. What's up?" "Well, I had a bit of a spat with John." "Oh, really? You two are just like the saying, the more you argue, the better you get along, huh?" Karen, my sister, who's 3 years younger than me, is working in the fashion industry. We've always been referred to as two peas in a pod, and we're very close. During my dating days with John, she was my go-to for advice. She's an irreplaceable part of my life. That day, too, she listened to me for almost an hour before I ended the call. Opening up to her helped me feel a bit better. I was in the 17th week of my pregnancy, and my belly was starting to show. Entering the stable period, I felt fine, so I headed to work as usual. After my lunch break, just as I was about to start my afternoon tasks, something happened. I felt a sudden, unfamiliar twinge in my belly. What was that? The pain seemed to linger. In that moment, I thought about the safety of my child. Feeling anxious, I left work early and rushed to the women's clinic I usually visit. Normally, John would make an appointment for me, but today was unexpected, and I didn't have one. It looked like I'd have to wait a while for a checkup, but the thought of going home like this filled me with anxiety. Ready for a long wait, I explained the situation to the reception staff. "Excuse me, I'm Christy Thomas, and I've been having some mild abdominal pain for a while." "Thomas, please, wait a moment." I didn't have an appointment because it was unexpected today." "Oh, here you are." "Huh? You're Christy Thomas, right? 17 weeks pregnant? We have an appointment for you. Please, wait over there." Okay." As instructed, I took a seat on the waiting room sofa. I took out my planner from my bag to check, but there was no appointment scheduled for today. Since that incident, things have been awkward between John and me, but he's still been making my medical appointments as usual. That said, my next appointment isn't until later. It's definitely not today. Feeling somewhat uneasy, I decided to just wait until they called me. About an hour passed when I was hit by the stomachache again. I stood up and headed to the restroom. And yet, my turn still hadn't come. Even for a busy clinic, I should have been called by now. Could it be that I didn't really have an appointment? I went back to the reception desk and asked a different staff member. "Excuse me, do you know how much longer it will be until I'm called? May I have your name, please?" "It's Thomas. Christy Thomas. I've been waiting for over an hour." "Thomas. Oh. Is there a problem?" "Well, you were called just now." "What? You should have been called into consultation room number 3. I thanked the staff and quickly headed to the consultation room. A sign on the door of room number 3 read, "In consultation." In consultation? I was supposed to be called, so why? Could someone else have mistakenly entered? In a split second, I knocked on the door of consultation room number 3. A nurse opened the door and asked, "Can I help you?" I'm Christy Thomas. I had to use the restroom earlier, and..." "Christy Thomas?" "The receptionist said I was already called, but the sign said in consultation, so I thought maybe someone else had gone in." "Wait, you're Christy Thomas? But she's already inside." "What?" No matter how I thought about it, something was off. Convinced of this, I pushed past the nurse and forced my way into the examination room. That's when it happened. An unbelievable sight met my eyes. "Why are you here?" There, in the room, was none other than my husband, John. The moment he saw me, he started speaking in a flustered manner. Christy, what are you doing here?" "That's what I was going to ask. Why are you here?" Could it be, John? Did you make the appointment under my name? But why?" "Just get out, for now!" John tried to forcefully push me out of the room. However, given this obviously strange situation, I couldn't just back down. "John, explain this to me. Why are you here right now?" I'll explain later. So, for now, I want an explanation now. You can't expect me to just accept this, can you? I'm begging you. Just leave for now." While I was arguing with John, the doctor, probably returning from an internal exam, came back, looking puzzled. "Wait, Christy, huh?" Seeing me, the doctor's eyes widened. Doctor, I just got here. Huh? Then who did I just examine? Just as he said that, the door to the exam room opened. Coming out of the room was none other than my sister, Karen. Oh, Karen? I had absolutely no idea what was going on anymore. Why is Karen here? Well... My frustration grew at Karen's hesitations. I confronted her. Why is the appointment under my name? And why did you come out of the examination room? Then the doctor, who had been listening, opened his mouth. Mrs. Thomas, I apologize for not realizing it was not you. She was wearing a mask, so I couldn't tell. But I thought it was strange. You're supposed to be 17 weeks pregnant, but the baby was too small. It was no wonder the doctor didn't realize. My sister and I look so much alike, and she was wearing a mask. Doctor, the person you just examined is my sister, and that man there is my husband. What? So, you mean the father of the baby I just examined is... The doctor's sharp gaze locked onto John. I could see the color draining from his face. And at that moment, I finally understood everything. John? Karen? I need an explanation. From the beginning. Whether they had given up or not, they slowly started to speak. According to them, they had been in a relationship for about a year. While I was struggling to get pregnant and undergoing fertility treatments, they claimed temptation got the better of them. Then my pregnancy was confirmed. At first, they were purely happy, but shortly after, Karen's pregnancy was also confirmed. Karen asked John to accompany her to the hospital because she was scared, and John, in his usual carelessness, mistakenly booked the appointment under my account. He noticed this just before we arrived at the hospital, panicked, pretended to forget the insurance card, and completed the check-in. While I was in the restroom, the staff at the front desk's shift changed. As soon as they called the name for the appointment, Karen must have slipped into the examination room without running into me. The doctor initially didn't realize it was Karen, since she was wearing a mask. But of course, during the examination, it became clear she wasn't me. And as the doctor was wondering about this, the real Christy arrived at the examination room. After that, I regained my composure and had my own checkup. The abdominal pain was diagnosed as transient, and there was no problem with my baby. I took my husband and sister and headed straight for our parents' house. I also contacted John's parents and asked them to come to the house. Once everyone was gathered, I explained to them the whole situation. Of course you're going to take responsibility, right? I asked. Stammering, my husband responded, Responsibility? Of course! I will continue to be with you, Christy. Huh? What are you talking about? We're obviously getting a divorce. But you just mentioned responsibility. The responsibility I'm talking about is alimony. I'm going to make sure you pay, both you and Karen, for what you've done. What? Wait a minute! I never intended to get a divorce. My husband's words sparked anger in my sister, who was standing nearby. What? You said you loved me more! Was that all a lie? Karen grabbed my husband's collar, and they started to argue. Their noisy squabble pushed my anger to its peak. I splashed the tea from the table on both of them, raising my voice as much as possible. Enough is enough! I don't care about your opinions! I'm divorcing John, and I'm cutting ties with Karen. You two just need to pay the alimony. Quietly! Wait, Christy! The one I love is you. Sis? I'm your sister, aren't I? Don't talk about alimony. Shut up! Both of you only say things that suit your purposes. How far do you plan to ridicule me? I will collect the alimony by any means necessary. If it means sending you two to hell, I'll do whatever it takes. If you get it, get out of my sight, you scumbags. At that, both of them began to prostrate themselves in front of me. Please forgive me, Christy. I beg you. Sis, I also beg you. It's too late for their repentance. What they did is unforgivable, and I have absolutely no intention of forgiving them. After that, my husband and I divorced, as expected. I blocked Karen's contact information and cut off all ties with them completely. They were disowned by their families and had to start living on their own. But John's affair was spread to his workplace through his parents, and because of that, he started receiving cold stares from his colleagues. Unable to bear the atmosphere, he continued to be absent from work without notice, and was eventually fired. Karen, on the other hand, was suffering from severe morning sickness and had already quit her job. Now jobless, whenever they faced each other, they cursed at each other and led a miserable life. They began living together, but they hadn't gotten married. I think they won't support each other as a married couple in the future. As for me, I moved back to my parents' house and am now leading a pregnant life. I switched my job to remote work and am anxiously waiting for the birth of my child. I might make my child suffer because there's no father. Even so, I intend to love this child with all my heart, in my own way.
Hello there. Have you been? Hey Ryan, it's been a while. By the way, what's this important news? Listen up. Believe it or not, your dear brother's finally getting married. No way, congratulations! My name is Cindy. I live with my husband Alex. We live quite a distance from our hometown within plane travel range, so we don't get to see our families often. So I got the news of Ryan's upcoming marriage over the phone. Is Alex doing well? If he's not, let me share my happy news with him. I'm sure it'll cheer him up. What's that all about? Well, I think he'll be happy. He's at work right now, so I'll tell him later. I appreciate it. Also, I wanted to check if you could possibly come back home this or next month. Is this about meeting your fiancé? Yes. You guys have the busiest jobs, don't you? That's why I was thinking about scheduling around your availability. Alex and I work in a specific field, where, although we mainly work from home, we hardly have any regular days off. Therefore, when situations like this arise, we usually work ahead to create some free time and plan accordingly. But, sorry Ryan, we're really busy with work at this time. If we can free up any time, it would probably not be until half a year from now. I see. What about the wedding? If you have a tentative date, I can make sure to be free that month. Well, we plan to do it in June, so about half a year from now. It might just coincide with when you're free. Well then, our first meeting could be at the wedding. But I'll talk to Alex. He might be able to make some time. Great. Let me know once you figure out your schedule. After hanging up with Ryan, I got back to work. About 2 hours later, Alex came out of his office and I stopped him. Hey Alex, I got a call from Ryan earlier. He's getting married. Really? That's wonderful. But he consulted me about wanting to meet sometime this month or next. You know how we're both really busy right now, right? So I told him it might be difficult. Yeah, these next couple of months might be tough. What about the wedding? He plans to have it about a half a year from now. We might be able to make that. Plus, you'll be around 7 months pregnant by then, right? Yeah. Actually, I was pregnant. I was not yet in the stable period. So, regardless of work, I was thinking of waiting until I got to that stable period. I might be overthinking it a bit, but still. Well, I'm sure Ryan understands. Oh! Did I forget to tell Ryan about the pregnancy? What? You didn't tell him you're pregnant? Well, I told our parents, and I thought they would relay the message. I guess he doesn't know, since we didn't talk about it. You need to call him right now. Alright. Sure enough, Ryan was surprised to find out, as he didn't know. It seemed that our parents thought I had contacted him directly, so he told me again not to push myself. By the time 3 months had passed since receiving the call from Ryan, I had reached my stable period. Our baby was growing healthily inside of me, and everything was going well. And my work was proceeding faster than expected, and I was able to secure some days off. I think we might be able to come over next week. But what about your fiancé? She said it's okay when I checked. Oh, by the way, you might know Stacy, my fiancé. Stacy? Did I have a friend with that name? Well, you'll know when you see her, right? Despite hearing about his fiancé from my brother, Ryan, no one immediately comes to mind. However, since we're both from the same small town, I thought there might be some mutual friends. So I was looking forward to meeting his fiancé when I went back home. Then, on the day of my return, Ryan brought his fiancé to our family home. Nice to meet you. Ah, I knew it. You're Cindy, right? Do you remember me? I'm Stacy. Ah, Stacy. Of course I remember you. As my brother said, his fiancée was indeed Stacy, my middle school classmate. But she wasn't a friend of mine. The reason was simple. She used to bully me back in middle school. She did unspeakable things a lot. Cindy, what's wrong? No, it's just surprising to see you after such a long time. You haven't changed at all. You're still cute. Stacy then turned her smile towards me, and then her gaze moved to my belly. By the way, you're pregnant, aren't you? Congratulations! Can I touch your belly? Yeah? Stacy gently stroked my belly. I suddenly felt a chill run down my spine. Sensing my discomfort, Alex asked, "Are you okay? Do you feel unwell? Why don't you lie down a bit?" Are you okay? Yeah, sorry, I'll go lie down for a bit. I stood up and went to lie down on the bed upstairs. After about half an hour, I felt a bit better, so I decided to go back to the living room. There, I heard Stacy talking about me. Cindy was so cute in middle school, and she was really popular. She was popular? Alex will be jealous. Please stop it, Bill. I don't care about the past. But I'm glad Cindy is Ryan's sister. It's refreshing to have a classmate become a relative. The living room had a great atmosphere, but just hearing Stacy's voice made me irritated. Maybe I should just spill everything. Like the fact that I was never called cute, and what they used to call me back then. But seeing Ryan's happy face, I didn't want to say anything. Ah, Sydney, are you okay? Stacy, who noticed me entering the living room, quickly stood up and came over to me. Aw, sorry for making you worry. I'm fine now, thanks. I'm sorry too for not noticing. I've never seen this side of Stacy. That's why I decided to think that Stacy had also changed as she'd grown up. I didn't feel the need to make a scene here. A month passed, and Ryan and Stacy's wedding was just a week away. Alex and I managed to adjust our schedule so we could attend. My health was fine, and I had no problem flying. Then one night, I got an unexpected message. Aw, sorry for calling so late. I got your number from Ryan. Ah, I see. So, what's up? I just wanted to check something. Your husband Alex, he's not there, is he? I'd prefer if we could have a two-person conversation, if possible. I found her words unsettling, but with my husband asleep, I asked, he's sleeping right now. But you said it's important? Yes, it's really important. Stacy started to ramble on over the phone. You know, I really think you shouldn't attend our wedding. Wait, why not? You're not feeling well, right? So, I'm saying you should take it easy. Anyway, that's what I think. Hold on. We were just talking about me going home already. I'm feeling better now. You can't just spring this on me all of a sudden, huh? What? You're not feeling well? Right. Stacy's questioning hadn't changed since we were young. In that moment, I realized she hadn't changed at all. I appreciate your concern, but I have to decline. I want to see my brother off as a sister. Let's just forget this conversation. Then Stacy let out a long sigh on the other end of the phone. Look, you don't need to interfere. It's going to look bad. I'm just trying to be nice to you. Why can't you understand that? She finally showed her true colors. Since middle school, I was picked on, being called a monster, instead of being called cute. I even remember being called a witch and being splashed with water and mocked. You're weak to water, aren't you? But I'm an adult now. I didn't want to be intimidated by such threats. I'm going to report this to my brother. You're going to regret this. I didn't want to see my brother upset, but I thought this was the best decision. But then Stacy burst out laughing and said something outrageous. If you can, why don't you tell him? Your dear brother will lose his job though. Wait, what do you mean? Ryan works at First Publishing, right? That's where my father works. This whole relationship came about because of my dad's recommendation. What on earth? You can tell him if you want. Just be ready for him to lose his fiancée and his job. What are you going to do? I understand. I'll accept your terms. I had no choice, but instead of accepting the condition that I won't attend the wedding, I made a proposal. But I want to go home. If I suddenly say I'm not feeling well and can't come, it will look suspicious, and I want to congratulate my brother properly. That's okay, right? Well, you do have a point. Your husband is handsome, so it's more natural if he attends. Alright, you have my permission. Who does she think she is? I held back my indication and hung up the phone. At 11 o'clock at night, I quietly sobbed. From the next day on, I masked my sadness so as not to show Alex. Then I received a work-related call. Actually, I was planning to stay at my parents' house for about 3 days before the wedding day, during which I had arranged to have a meeting at their place. I had to attend no matter what, since I was going home anyway. And so, I returned to my parents' house the day before the wedding, and the day finally came. On the wedding day, I was at the wedding venue. Alex went to use the restroom, and I entered the venue slowly. Suddenly, "Hey you! Why are you here?" Stacy approached me at the entrance of the wedding venue and whispered to me. She approached to me so as not to be noticed by others and whispered in my ear, "We didn't prepare a seat for the monster. Go home." At the moment when I thought her cruel whisper wasn't heard by anyone, "Teacher, thank you for coming to my daughter's wedding today." Stacy's father greeted me with a smile. Stacy turned ashen when she saw this. Dad, you know each other?" "Hey Stacy, never mind that. What are you doing here? It's disgraceful for you to be here in your dress before the ceremony." I just peeped and saw Sydney was here, so..." "I'm sorry about my daughter. She can be a bit unsettled. No need to worry. We were classmates, so I understand." I returned the sentiment with a smile. Stacy was also smiling at me, but her eyes were not laughing. "Is Alex here too?" "Yes, he is. He's just in the restroom." "Really? Well, I'm glad to hear that our children are getting married. And we're becoming relatives. Both of you are our company's top creators. I'm proud of that." "Oh, please don't flatter us." What does that mean, top creators? Don't you know? Cindy is a famous comic artist, known as Cindy Lim, and her husband is a famous mystery novelist, Mr. Alex Martin." "What? I didn't know." "We as a couple are thriving as creators. Unfortunately, we have so much work that it's hard to take days off." Stacy, understanding the situation and the relationship with her father, turned her gaze toward me and beamed. "No way! You should have told me sooner. This is news to me. Anyway, wait in the lounge. Did you check in? I'm so happy to become your relative today. Take care of yourself. If anything happens during the ceremony, tell me right away, okay? See you later." Stacy spoke quickly and tried to leave the place as if escaping. However, I had no intention of attending this wedding. The reason being, Alex and I were planning to cancel at the last minute. I took out the voice recorder hanging from my neck and played it. "We didn't prepare a seat for a monster. Go home." I played it over and over again, stopping it, rewinding it, and playing it again. "What? What is this?" "I'm sorry, but your daughter said this, so we will be absent." Stacy stopped in her tracks at this and gave a bitter smile. "What? What is that? That's not my voice." The voice recorders these days are handy, aren't they? They can even display when and where they were recorded. "Hey, what does this mean?" Stacy's father, his face turning red, confronted Stacy. Stacy continued to deny in a teary voice. "But even if you say there's no evidence or not, I've been called a monster by your daughter, and have been treated badly since middle school. Because of this, I will also be missing tomorrow's project." "Wait a minute, isn't tomorrow an important joint project meeting? It's a major project that will decide the fate of our company. Already, the ads are running everywhere. If the project disappears, it'll be disastrous." "Yes, I know, but I will also be absent." Alex came to my side and moved the conversation forward. No way, can't you do something? Well, actually, your daughter was calling my wife in the middle of the night saying something that was almost threatening, so I won't forgive anyone who makes my wife suffer. And now that Stacy's taken her brother hostage, I suggested to my wife that it would be best for us to do this. What? Stacy, what have you done? It's not true. Dad, it's a misunderstanding. There's no way it's a misunderstanding. Ryan came out of the dressing room. His expression was stern, showing his anger. Stacy rushed to Ryan with tearful eyes. It's not true, I didn't do anything. But Ryan took out his smartphone and showed a video. In it, Stacy was recorded saying, "Why did she come, despite being a monster? I'll kick her out," and running from the dressing room on the second floor. My buddy happened to be filming you when you came out in your wedding dress. You can't deny it now, can you? Stacy collapsed. I'm truly sorry. I didn't realize at all. I'm the one who should apologize. It's okay. You did nothing wrong. And thanks, Alex. We'll have to call off today, so you can go home ahead of us. Being told this by my brother, I returned home with Alex. Of course, the wedding was canceled. In the evening, Stacy's parents came to apologize, bringing Stacy with them. Naturally, because my brother was involved, the project is to be continued as expected. Work is work. I always thought personal matters didn't matter, and then Stacy was disowned by her parents. The punishment for using her father's name to scrape the project was severe, they said. Originally, Stacy had secured a contract job through her father's connections, but she resigned after receiving cold treatment, and she's now job hunting. Of course, she has to pay for the wedding cancellation fees and compensation, so she's scraping by with a part-time job now. Meanwhile, my brother continues to enjoy his work. He said he was done with marriage, but half a year later, I got a proud text that he'd fallen in love with my assistant. Of course, she's a really nice person, but as a sister, I'm a bit taken aback by his quick turnaround. Well, as long as he's happy, that's all that matters.
It's clear as day. The inheritance is going to the eldest son. This will is legit. I hope you're satisfied now. You're doubting it, you damn daughter-in-law.
What? Even though our father-in-law had so much money, is it okay to take it all? My husband looked down on me, while his daughter-in-law rejoiced. The $10 million inheritance from our father will all go to my brother. I stared at the will in despair. Have I lost everything? Bound to this wretched man forever? But with just one sentence from my brother, everything changed. My name is Emily. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. I don't have any children with my husband Liam. We live alone. In one word, my husband is a classic tyrant. Since the beginning of our marriage, I was always expected to obey him. I could never challenge or voice my opinion against him. My husband, who was 10 years older, never showed any consideration for me. I was treated like a servant, harshly insulted if anything displeased him, even after I tried my best doing housework. I was blamed continuously for not being able to bear children. I would often hide and cry. I wanted to divorce him, but I didn't want to worry my family, and I didn't have the financial capability to support myself. Under the tyranny of my arrogant and abusive husband, I clenched my teeth and endured. My only mental support was my father. He was a highly competent businessman. He built a company from scratch and developed it into a large corporation. He was a workaholic, but he loved my brother and me in his own way. After my mother passed away in a car accident shortly after my marriage, he threw himself into his work, even more to suppress his loneliness. Perhaps his overworking led to his downfall. He had a stroke and was taken to the hospital. Fortunately, he survived, but he was left paralyzed on the left side. As a result of working so strenuously, he had accumulated a substantial amount of wealth. I convinced my father to retire. Worried about him living alone, I somehow convinced my husband, and we moved into my father's house. Once a workaholic, he aged dramatically after retirement. He started showing signs of dementia and quickly became bedridden and in need of care. My physical and mental burden increased significantly. In addition to the usual housework and taking care of my husband, I now had to care for my father with dementia. My father would sometimes be quiet, but he would also yell and cause a commotion at night, or wander out of the house. I was constantly exhausted from the stress, sleep deprivation, and endless labor. My father was often hazy, but there were moments when he was clear-minded. During those times, we could have peaceful conversations like old times. He would often thank me and say with a sad smile, "I want to leave you as much as I can." Then my father passed away. It was 3 years after I started caring for him. I was relieved from the burden of care, but losing my only emotional support left me overwhelmed with grief and loneliness. My only hope was my father's inheritance. Even if my brother and I split the $10 million inheritance, it would still be $5 million each. With that money, I could finally get away from that demonic husband. It was the only hope left in my life. A few days later, I was called in by my husband and Natalie, my brother's wife, about the inheritance. My brother, Natalie's husband, had been working abroad alone for several years. He came back temporarily for the funeral, but he returned to his post just yesterday. As a stand-in for the eldest son, his wife Natalie would be attending.
"My father-in-law's will has been found deep in a drawer,"
he said.
"I'm glad it was prepared. The envelope wasn't even sealed, so let's take a look right away."
A will? Did something like that exist? Despite providing daily dedicated care to him, I never saw my father writing a will. I found it peculiar that my husband, who barely got near my father, let alone care for him, knew about this. A feeling of unease rose in me. I had a bad premonition.
"All right, I'm going to read it now. All of my assets are to be inherited to my eldest son, Mason. Dated Rewa, day X, month Y. Signed, Steve." That's all.
I couldn't believe my ears. I hadn't always assumed my father's inheritance would be evenly split between my brother and me. The entire inheritance of $10 million would go to my brother? Wait a minute. That's not right. Why? In my confusion, my husband thrust the will towards me.
"See for yourself."
Sure enough, it was written just as he said, alongside my father's signature. I immediately suspected that the will was a forgery. My father had a good relationship with both my brother and me, and wasn't the kind of person to favor only one of us. But would my kind and straightforward brother really monopolize the inheritance for himself? While I was pondering in paranoia, the eldest son's wife raised her voice in glee. "Wow! Even though father-in-law had so much money, is it really okay to take it all? I feel a bit bad, but if that's his will, we must respect it." This was impossible to accept. While I sat silent, holding the will, my husband and the eldest son's wife glared at me.
"Hey, don't tell me you're doubting this. Fine. Then bring in a handwriting expert or whatever. You're just upset because it doesn't work out in your favor. You're such a bad character."
"I will do that," I murmured, deciding to request an evaluation of the will, but the results were contrary to my expectation, declaring it was undoubtedly written by the deceased himself. Upon hearing the shocking result, I was crestfallen, recalling the days gone by in sadness. I had dedicated my life to looking after my husband and father. The days of living in fear of my husband's anger, getting hurt by his harsh words, being called a worthless woman, were tough, but my last days with my father were happy, and I had believed that my father truly cared for me. The shock of feeling ignored by my beloved father was unbearable, more so than not receiving the inheritance. I'd probably have to leave the house and land I'm so used to, as they're a part of my father's real estate inheritance. The divorce from my husband that I had dreamt about now seemed like a distant dream. One weekend, I shared the results of the will's evaluation with my husband at home. With a smug look on his face, he laughed at me.
"It's clear now. All the inheritance belongs to the eldest son. Don't meddle anymore. You should be satisfied now, since the will was genuine. Distrusting witch."
He sneered before leaving the house. Recently, my husband had been out of the house more frequently. He'd been coming home late from work, and like today, He's often away on his days off. I found it suspicious, but I didn't want to see him more than necessary, so in a way I felt relieved. Though my husband told me not to. I wanted to discuss the matter of the inheritance directly with my brother. My brother, who works overseas, is always busy, but he's a kind and reliable person. After checking with him about his availability, skipping the pleasantries, my older brother apologized for leaving our father's care to me and thanked me for handling the funeral and the various procedures. Don't worry about it. So, about our father's inheritance, was it always decided that you alone would inherit everything? I tried asking in as casual a tone as possible. It was a heart-wrenching thing to think our father might not have loved me, but I wanted to have this conversation.
What? What do you mean? I'm inheriting everything?
My brother was shocked. I had assumed that Natalie had already filled him in, but this was news to him. However, the will was authentic, and the outcome would likely remain the same. I explained the situation to my brother.
I see. So the handwriting on the will was Dad's, and that was the only content. Okay. I need some time to think. I'll get back to you. Don't proceed with the inheritance process until you hear from me. I'll let Natalie know.
With that, my brother hung up. I waited for his call, intrigued by the situation. A few days later, my brother got back to me. He suspected that his wife, Natalie, was up to something and wanted me to hire a private investigator. He also advised me to make a claim for a reserved portion from him. A reserved portion is a part of the inheritance that's guaranteed to the legal heirs, with the amount set according to their position. In my case, I could claim $2.5 million out of my father's $10 million inheritance. Even with the will stating everything will be inherited by my eldest son alone, I would still be able to inherit $2.5 million using this provision. However, my husband and eldest son's wife fiercely opposed this.
We've already settled this. Don't make a fuss now.
But my brother's advice didn't stop there. I'm not asking for $2.5 million. All I want is his house, filled with memories of our father, and the land. The real estate is worth only $1 million out of the total $10 million inheritance. I'll leave the rest to my eldest brother. Despite their objections, I continued. If things get more complicated, my brother has suggested I hire a lawyer to join the discussion. If that happens, I'll end up inheriting the full $2.5 million. My husband and eldest son's wife fell silent. They seemed to realize that settling for the $1 million in real estate was more advantageous. So, we finally reached an agreement on the distribution of the inheritance. A few days later, I received the investigation report on Natalie, which I had commissioned. I immediately contacted my brother. After a series of twists and turns, we successfully completed the procedures for our father's inheritance. My brother, Mason, even flew in from abroad to join the proceedings. I inherited the house and land, worth $1 million, while my older brother inherited the remaining $9 million. Natalie, my brother's wife, and my husband were both thrilled as everything had gone according to their plans. After leaving the lawyer's office, where we had finalized the inheritance proceedings, the four of us returned to our father's house. As we sat in the living room enjoying some tea, my brother put his phone on the table and started talking.
Good job, everyone. Now that the inheritance proceedings are over, I have something to discuss.
With a smile, my brother pulled out a document from his pocket and spread it on the table. My husband and Natalie's faces froze when they saw the contents. Last Will and Testament. That's what the title of the document said. At the end, there was my father's signature and official seal. The date on it was about 5 years ago.
This is the will my father entrusted to me when he was still active. It's a legally valid will, created with 2 witnesses at a notary office.
He explained that our father had drafted it himself before he had a stroke. His wife had already passed away, and he wanted to ensure his children inherited his wealth should anything happen to him. The will specified that Mason, who already had substantial assets, will inherit 1/4 of the estate, and Emily, a homemaker, will inherit 3/4. My father had stated that he had no intention of changing the contents of the will, and had explicitly written,
If any changes are to be made to this will, the reason for the change must be stated. Any will with changes not accompanied by a reason will be deemed invalid. Father was overworking himself due to his job. I think he considered various possibilities, like falling ill and becoming vegetative or suffering from dementia, because the amount of his assets was enormous. He prepared early to prevent any disputes among the remaining family members after he was gone, my brother said as he patted the wall. The will had a supplemental section that said, I wish for all of you to live happily together, without any conflicts over the inheritance. It was a will filled with our father's warm feelings for his family. Learning that I, like my brother, had been loved by my father warmed my heart. On the other hand, the faces of my husband and my eldest son's wife sitting next to me had turned pale. So, if this will is to be changed, it's completely invalid, unless the reason is stated. Even if it is in father's handwriting, he might have been forced to write it when he was in a state of dementia. Suddenly, my husband slammed the table, looked at my brother with a face like a demon. He growled, Mason, do you have any proof? Accusing people of being criminals. I never said Liam forged the will, did I? He looked at Natalie, the eldest son's wife, sitting next to him. Natalie remained silent. It was strange. Natalie informed me about father's death, and I was in Japan until the funeral. After I returned overseas, apparently discussions about the inheritance took place. Despite the matter involving me, there was no communication about it. He looked at Natalie, his wife. Natalie still said nothing. Enough with your nonsense. The inheritance has already been settled. The $9 million is ours. What does it matter now? My husband blurted out. Who do you mean by us? I am the one who inherited. My brother responded. Enough! My husband yelled. The conversation wasn't going anywhere. I don't quite understand, but the $9 million I inherited is nothing more than a worthless piece of paper. My brother stated. Huh? My husband looked puzzled. My brother explained calmly. Father's $10,000 estate. Other than the real estate, all the assets were stocks in my father's own company. When he was the manager, the company was doing well and the stock prices were soaring. However, after his resignation, the company had been in the red and was on the brink of bankruptcy 3 years before his death. What used to be a wealth valued over $9 million was now nothing more than worthless paper. There's no way that's possible. It's true. I inherited it, knowing full well I plan to sort out the debts of father's company from now on. My husband was agitated, cradling his head and murmuring to himself. He seemed unable to accept the reality that was suddenly before him. This is when Natalie spoke up for the first time. Hold on. Just wait a minute. So what? I inherited trash without knowing it, and Emily alone inherited $1 million? That's not fair. It's unfair. Next to Natalie, who was in a fit of rage, her brother sighed. Natalie, I inherited my father's estate. It doesn't disadvantage you. Is it something to get so angry about? But I thought we were going to get the whole $10 million. I was. Natalie, who was flustered and stumbling over her words, was sharply glared at by her husband Liam. So you conspired with Liam and had an affair because you thought you were going to get all of Dad's money. Natalie and her husband fell silent as if they were frozen. Why? Why? Natalie murmured in a hoarse voice. Glancing at her, the brother continued. After his phone call with me, he said he began to suspect his wife, Natalie. Why didn't she tell him about the inheritance? Why had her interactions with him become curt recently? And why was she ignoring his messages? As he was suspecting, he saw Natalie's social media post and became convinced of her affair. Soon I'm going to come into a huge amount of money. I'm going to be a celebrity. Darling and I are discussing how to spend it. He said we'll have lots of fun when the money comes in. I'm so happy. I don't recall having that kind of conversation with you. I wonder who this darling is. No, that's not it.
This is different. Ignoring his flustered wife, the brother took out a large envelope. He pulled out several photos and lined them up next to the will. They showed Natalie and Liam arm in arm, entering a hotel. Close relationship between the two of them was obvious. I was overseas, you see. I had a detective agency investigate. I was curious about your darling. Faced with irrefutable evidence, Natalie was trembling. Looking at Natalie's adulterous husband, he was boiling with rage, as red as a boiled octopus, in contrast to Natalie, who had turned pale.
Sneaking around like a stalker? What's your game? Bringing out this nonsense, will, and pictures? This is all?
Wait! Suddenly, Natalie raised her voice. She sidled up to her brother with her wheedling voice. You've got it all wrong. It was Liam's doing. He said that if I did as he said, we'd get all of our father-in-law's assets. I was manipulated too. Wouldn't you be happy to get $10 million? I did it for you. Her husband, who'd been betrayed so easily, was gaping at Natalie. These photos. We were just having a little fun. You were always overseas and I was lonely. Can you blame me? You're partly responsible too, right? Please forgive me. We lost the $9 million. But let's take Emily's $1 million worth of real estate.
Did you forge the will?
Huh? Of course not. Liam did it. He said it was easy and made our father-in-law write it. See? I didn't do anything wrong. When the matter of forging the will was also exposed, the husband flew into a rage and lunged at Natalie, but the brother quickly intervened.
You bunch of bastards! You don't have any evidence. I'll make sure all of you regret it in the next life.
With a cool gaze, the brother watched the husband angrily kicking the chairs about. He nonchalantly picked up his phone.
Well, it appears my phone was on recording mode without me noticing. It appears to have been recording since the moment I walked into the house. Quite a careless move on my part.
My husband and Natalie went silent, their faces paling.
Also, didn't mention this earlier, but we have surveillance cameras in this room. They've been recording everything. Installed them because Dad's dementia was severe. We wanted to keep an eye on him just in case. Quite the coincidence, right?
In the quiet living room, the brother continued his monologue.
The forgery of the will. That falls under penal law. Forgery of a document with a seal. Those harsh words you directed at us just now, that's intimidation under penal law. There's a police station nearby. They'd come right away if we called. But, well, the inheritance issue is resolved. And if you swear not to meddle with Emily's share in the future, maybe there's no need to report this. What do you think?
As he spoke, he said,
I'll send this voice recording to my computer abroad. It'd be a shame to waste it.
And began operating his phone. I had been quietly observing their exchange until now, but I pulled out some documents from my bag and thrust them towards my husband. Let's get a divorce right here, right now. I spread out the completed divorce application, a pen, and my husband's personal seal on the table.
Hey, wait. Think about this, all right? I apologize. We've been together for so long. We've had good times, right? Who do you think has been providing for you?
That's enough. Quit your blabbering and sign this. I'll report you. With a fierce expression, I gripped my phone. Resigned, my husband dropped his shoulders and signed the divorce papers.
Natalie, it's over for us too. Once I had the money, you planned to take it and be with Liam, didn't you? I had the detective agency let me listen to the recordings of your conversations with Liam.
Natalie hung her head, covering her face. After that, my brother and I divorced. The husband, after the divorce, left the house. The inheritance he thought he had gained was not only worthless, but he was exposed for the will forgery by Natalie, and everything that happened in the living room was recorded. He must have been boiling with rage, but there was nothing he could do about it. The surveillance camera in the living room was indeed installed for taking care of my father, but it also served the purpose of collecting evidence of my husband's emotional abuse. If my husband refused to divorce after gaining the inheritance, and it caused a dispute, I planned to present it as evidence in the divorce trial.
When I discussed this with my brother, he suggested that we could make use of the camera as well. After the divorce, it seems rumors of his affair spread at work, and he lost his place there and resigned. It seems his colleagues saw him entering and exiting a hotel with a family member who wasn't his wife. His parents had already passed away, and now he had lost his home and job. He's nowhere to be found. I had asked for compensation in the divorce trial, but I didn't want anything to do with Liam anymore. And since I had received the inheritance, I didn't care. Natalie, Liam's affair partner, also lost everything because of the incident, just like Liam. Until the end of her divorce with my brother, she persistently pleaded, "I don't want to break up. Don't leave me." But the divorce was finalized when irrefutable evidence was presented in mediation. Compensation was also claimed from Natalie in the divorce trial, but she had spent a lot of money while her husband was absent, so that was claimed as well, leaving her completely penniless. Without a job or a home to return to, just like Liam, he seemed to be eking out a living in a rundown public housing unit, subsisting on welfare. My brother is still stationed abroad, and he's put up the house where Natalie and he used to live for sale. He's decided to live with me in the house that our father left us. I was living modestly, but with my brother contributing to living expenses, life has become stable. The value of the land our father left us has been rising annually and is now easily worth over $10 million. Freed from the duties of caring for my father and enduring my husband's emotional abuse, I am living at ease. Now that I have some time to myself and live alone in this big house, I wondered if there was something useful I could do with it. Around that time, I saw a TV show about exchange students doing home stays and thought, this is it. So I decided to start renting out my spare rooms. Now, I provide affordable rooms to college students and exchange students, and I live a lively life with them. We eat meals together, play games, help with assignments. It's like we're one big, noisy, happy family. On days when I have some spare time, I also volunteer to read children's books at the local public library. I don't have any children of my own, and my heart had drifted apart from my husband. I had always feared how lonely I'd feel if I lost my beloved father on top of all this. But now my days are incredibly lively and filled with vitality. I can't tell you how happy it makes me to connect with young people at this age and feel that I'm contributing even a little to society. There were many times when I wanted to run away from my own life because things got so hard. But now, I'm loosely connected with my brother, my roommates, and the people in my community, and I'm living fulfilling days. I savor the simple happiness that I finally attained every single day.
I'm Sophie, 28 years old. I met Mike at work when I was 24. We started dating and got married 2 years later. Along with our wedding, I quit my job to become a full-time housewife. It was a little sad leaving the workplace where we met, filled with such cherished memories, but the wonderful people there told me warmly, "You're always welcome to come back." Since Mike and I worked at the same place, I fully understand the nature of his job. During the busiest season of the year, he's exceptionally overloaded and ends up working overtime almost every day. So I always make sure that all the chores are done by the time he gets home, just so he can relax. I do everything I can to support him, like giving him massages and filling our home with the calming scent of essential oils. Sure, we have our disagreements from time to time, but overall, we were leading a pretty enjoyable life. Then, one day, my younger sister, Mia, came to visit our apartment. It was a Sunday, so my husband Mike was home. "Hey, sis! I'm here to hang out with you!" Mia's syrupy voice sounded from the intercom. I reluctantly opened the door, lightly pushing her away. "What? You didn't tell me you were coming over." "Oh, geez, you're just as cold as ever, sis. I came over because I have something important to talk about," she replied as she barged into our home. "Hey, wait! Can't we just talk at the entrance?" I called after her, but she didn't even look back as she went straight into the living room. I sighed. Ah, for goodness sake. And reluctantly headed to the living room too. As you may have guessed, I'm not very fond of my sister Mia. You might be surprised to hear that, but you'll understand why soon enough. When I reached the living room, Mia was already seated on the sofa, fiddling with her phone. Hey, if you have something to talk about, get on with it already. Standing still. Then Mike chimed in leisurely. Come on, she came all this way. Why don't you make her some tea? Just make it yourself, then. I didn't want to react out of anger, so I just snapped back at them in my head. So reluctantly, I went to make the tea. I made 3 cups of tea in the kitchen, and when I returned to the living room, for some reason, Mike was sitting next to Mia. Huh? Why is he sitting there? He usually sits next to me. As I felt something odd, I handed Mia her tea. Thanks, sis. I'm sorry for dropping by all of a sudden, she said. If you feel that way, then get to the point. It's Mike's day off today, after all. As I grumbled, Mia said something I hadn't expected. I know that, which is why I came over today. What do you mean by that? As I was about to reply, Mike abruptly cut in. Sophie, I want a divorce. What? Divorce? Why so sudden? I felt as though time had stopped. I didn't understand what my beloved husband was saying. What did I just hear? Was I hearing things? Or was it a dream? Even as I frantically tried to make sense of the situation, there was no mistaking that Mike, my husband, and Mia, my biological sister, were sitting right in front of me. That's when I finally comprehended the fact that my husband was asking for a divorce. I reacted just like you would see in a comic or drama. What did you just say? And then, without changing his expression, Mike delivered the brutal truth. I got your sister Mia pregnant. So I'm thinking we should divorce. Please let me go. He got Mia, my sister, pregnant? He didn't just want a divorce from me. He, a married man, had gotten my own sister pregnant. A wave of loathing anger and sadness towards Mike hit me, all at once, much later than I would have expected. Why? We agreed we would wait to have kids, didn't we? I managed to croak out, only for Mike to reply with a guilty look. I'm sorry, but I consider her more important than you right now. Beside Mike, Mia was smirking as she watched my reaction. How long has this been going on? I asked. Mia answered my question. About 6 months ago? Remember when we all celebrated your birthday at our parents' house? I think that's when it started. Isn't that right? Ah, yes, that time. Half a year ago, I remember celebrating my birthday at my parents' house. At the time, my husband Mike and my sister Mia, who lived with my parents, were also present. We had a wonderful time together. As the birthday girl, I drank a lot and got pleasantly drunk. And then I fell asleep earlier than anyone else. They said their relationship began that day. When I was completely drunk, Mia took advantage of the situation. Initially, it seems that Mia was the one who made advances, and Mike rejected her. However, after her relentless pursuit, Mike gave in, and they began meeting regularly. Without my knowledge, they nurtured their love for these past 6 months. As a result, Mia, my sister, got pregnant with Mike's child before I did, and I am his wife. Mike chose Mia, with whom he only had a half-year relationship, over me, his wife. What? I don't understand. Why? How? Anger, misery, sadness, a mix of all these emotions turned my head into a whirlwind. However, pursuing the details would not change their relationship. The fact that Mia is pregnant and Mike wants to divorce me are all realities. While I was wrestling with my emotions, Mia snorted with laughter. Her despicable attitude infuriated me even more. Well, I do feel bad for you, sis, but hey, can't help it if I fell in love, right? Mia said. Can't help it? What are you talking about? What about this situation is unavoidable? Unable to suppress my emotions, I raised my voice. Well, it can't be helped, right? Even now, the baby in my belly is growing healthily. Can you quickly come to terms with that? Mia retorted. I don't care about that. This would not have happened if you hadn't made a move on Mike. But it's pointless. The more I say, the more miserable I feel. No matter how much I blame Mia, it doesn't change the fact that Mike chose her. Mia is pregnant with his child. He accepts that fact and has prioritized his future with Mia over me. Once I accepted that, for some reason, I had nothing left to say to Mia. Seeing this, Mia exchanged a glance with Mike and smirked. Mia, I want to talk to Mike alone. Could you leave us, please? I said in a tone colder than I'd ever used before. Left alone with me, Mike looked incredibly awkward. Hey, do you really love Mia? I asked. And without making eye contact, Mike nodded slightly. Speak up! Are you considering marrying Mia because she's pregnant? Or did you plan to be with her instead of me from the beginning? I pressed Mike for a clear answer. Finally, he opened his mouth. At first, I thought it was okay as long as we didn't get caught. When she got pregnant, I thought I had to take responsibility. That's why I decided to marry her, and that means I have to divorce you. I was deeply disappointed. I thought he would have made a more solid resolve. Such a pathetic reason. My own husband. What a ridiculous man. Rather than sadness or anger, disbelief took over first. Concealing my emotions, I just said, I see, and left the room. Huh, so that's the end of my married life with Mike. It ended. Just like that. I murmured to myself in my room. It was a ridiculous and miserable marriage. I've disliked Mia for as long as I can remember, because she always took everything that was important to me. Clothes and accessories were one thing, but she even stole my boyfriends when we were growing up. Whenever I confronted her, she would fake cry and get everyone on her side. When I finally bought the bag I'd wanted for so long after working part-time, Mia used it without my permission when I wasn't home and ended up breaking it. When I asked her to compensate me, far from showing remorse, she mocked me. What are you saying? I just used it because it doesn't suit you, you know? Who cares if it's broken? That bag didn't suit you anyway. My anger peaked at my sister's words, and when I yelled at her, she ran straight to our parents. Dad! Mom! Sophie is picking on me! Mia would put on a huge crying act, and I could only sigh in disbelief. What? You're the one who used my stuff and broke it! I didn't mean to! It was so cute! So I just borrowed it! Our parents never questioned Mia's fake tears. On the contrary, they blamed me alone. As the older sister, you should be kinder to Mia. That's right, you're the older one here. Stop acting like a child. Mia grinning from a hidden corner as my parents blamed me angered me even more. My parents never listened to my side of the story, always taking Mia's side. In the end, Mia got everything done her way. That's right, she was always the one setting up a situation where I seemed like the villain. Always watching, grinning as the older sister, who made the younger one cry, was blamed. I despised Mia. As an adult, I kept my distance from Mia as much as possible. That's why, even when I was about to get married, I kept it a secret from Mia until the last minute. Yet, I never expected her to steal my husband. I'm sure she doesn't truly love my husband. Just like that, when she stole my boyfriend, she couldn't stand the fact that I was happily married. That's the kind of person my sister is. Before I could calm my emotions, Mia entered my room. Are you done talking with Mike? Mia grinned as usual. Sorry, but can you please not come in without permission? Wow! But, well, that's that. You guys are having a divorce, right? This house and Mike. Everything is mine now. You're in the way, Sophie, so pack up your things quickly and leave. Mia brought her face even closer and said, There's no way you could win against me, you idiot! The grin that was on her face until a moment ago was gone, replaced by a clear expression of looking down on me. After berating me to her satisfaction, Mia returned to the living room with a triumphant expression. At that moment, the black devil inside me woke up. Enough is enough. I can't take this anymore. She's nothing to me. Not even my sister anymore. She's just a wicked woman. I've put up with this for far too long. But this is the limit. I won't let things go her way. I'll ruin Mia's life. I return to the living room and declare loudly to my husband and sister, "I'm not divorcing!" What? What are you saying, Sophie? What do you mean, Sophie? Why are you saying that now? In front of me were my husband and sister, shocked at my words, but I didn't care what they thought anymore. Do you hear me? I'll say it again. I'm not divorcing. Do you think I would just agree to divorce because you're pregnant? You think I would just say, okay, and let it happen? Mike widened his eyes in surprise, and Mia looked a bit flustered. Huh? Are you stupid? There's no way I'd let things go your way. Harsh words came out one after the other. Even I was surprised. Sophie, what are you saying? Do you understand the situation? I'm pregnant. Pregnant? So what? I could clearly see my sister's distress. Serves her right. Whether you're pregnant or not, that's not my concern. I won't agree to a divorce, and if you're not satisfied, we can go to court. Court? Isn't that a bit too much? My husband's face twisted at the mention of court, as though he was frightened by the idea. I stood my ground against my sister, who had turned pale. Also, we're done. For me, you're no longer a sister or anything, just my husband's mistress. And, of course, I'll be demanding compensation for distress, so prepare yourself. At my declaration of cutting ties, my sister wore an expression of despair. She looked as if she had aged decades in an instant. I'd never seen her look like this before. It seems my words were hitting home. Finally, I had my revenge. It filled my heart in a strange way. I dragged my collapsed sister to the door, tossed her personal items outside, and told her, "Get out, and fast! If you linger here any longer, I'm calling the police." She gritted her teeth in frustration, hurriedly gathered her scattered belongings, and left. I then turned to my husband, who was hanging his head in defeat. "Just so you know, I'll be demanding compensation from you too." True to my words, I hired a lawyer and finished various legal procedures. After dragging out the divorce proceedings, I finally divorced my husband, once my sister had given birth. My sister and husband were elated, saying, "We can finally be together." But they're so naive. The world isn't that sweet, is it? I timed it perfectly, returning to my old job. Of course, I told the company everything that had happened. I was immediately rehired, having been a dedicated worker, while my husband, who worked at the same company, was met with disdain from everyone. Did you hear he got his sister-in-law pregnant while still married? That's disgusting. His ex-wife is the one who recently came back to work, right? I feel so bad for Sophie. I couldn't stand it if it were me. The gossip about my husband was all over the company. Of course, I made sure to spread the news everywhere I went. Feeling uncomfortable at the company, my husband voluntarily resigned a month after my return. He apparently lived in an apartment with my sister afterward, but due to financial constraints, they soon had to move into a smaller apartment. My sister didn't want to downgrade her lifestyle and cried to our parents for help. However, I had already revealed everything to our parents at the same time. Our parents, who always sided with my sister, were furious this time and declared they were cutting ties with her. "How dare you sleep with your sister's husband?" "That's right! And to become pregnant with your sister's husband's child? How are we supposed to face the neighbors?" Both our father and mother were livid. Even my sister should understand that she won't be receiving any more help from them. I may have gone too far. Am I too ruthless? But compared to what that wicked woman did to me, this is nothing. I managed to let off some steam at my parents, who always spoiled my sister, and I was able to recover the compensation for distress from both my ex-husband and sister. Now that I'm back to my old job, I have no financial worries. Now it's their turn to experience hell. They ruined my life enough. From now on, I'm going to prioritize my own happiness and live a fulfilling life.
It was the day of a family dinner centered around my 3-month-old son, Alexander. While everyone was enjoying their meal, my 8-year-old niece, Emma, was the only one not eating. Instead, she was intently watching Alexander. Alexander was also staring back at Emma, moving his arms and legs. Seems like Alexander has something to say. Then Emma began to speak, and what she said was astonishing. My husband Michael's face turned pale and his lips trembling. Michael had been called out on a secret he thought only he knew. Seeing this, I decided to expose Michael's truth right then and there. I'm Jessica, a 25-year-old housewife. I married Michael, who is 3 years older and works in an office 2 years ago. Despite the challenges of new motherhood, we were living a happy life as a family of 3. My sister Sophia and her husband live nearby. Ever since I was pregnant, Sophia has been a great help, often coming over to assist with chores and keep me company. One day, Sophia told me something unbelievable. Her 8-year-old daughter, Emma, my niece, apparently has a mysterious power. Sophia recounted an incident. When she and Emma were driving, Emma suddenly said, "We should take another route. There will be an accident if we go this way." Sophia didn't understand why Emma would say such a thing, especially when the road ahead looked clear. But Emma looked so serious that Sophia decided to change routes. The next day, we learned from the news that a major accident had occurred on the road they were initially going to take. Sophia was horrified to think what might have happened if she had ignored Emma's warning. There were other instances too, like when Emma predicted a burglary in the neighbor's house, which actually happened. However, Sophia had warned the neighbors in advance, so they were able to evacuate with their valuables, avoiding any loss. I am not a fan of the occult, so I just found Sophia's stories creepy, and I didn't really believe Emma had any special powers. I told Michael about it, but he also brushed it off, saying, "Well, strange things do happen." By the way, ever since I got pregnant, Michael started coming home late, often drunk. I wished he would help me with the baby or the housework, even just a little, but that never happened. He had promised to co-parent when we found out I was pregnant, but after the birth, he left all the child care to me. Finally home. Michael's drunken voice would wake up Alexander, who I had just put to sleep. Holding a crying Alexander, I told Michael, "Please keep it down, you're waking Alexander, and can you please cut back on the drinking and come home earlier?" Michael yelled back, "I have work obligations, okay? You should be grateful you can live this way. Stop nagging me." His shouting woke Alexander again, who cried even louder this time. I was angry at Michael's words, but arguing with a drunk person was pointless. All I could do was put Alexander back to sleep. 2 weeks later, Sophia and Emma came to visit on a day when Michael was home. Seeing Alexander for the first time, Emma said, "He's so tiny and cute," and was completely enamored with the baby. But after a while, Emma started glancing at Michael. Curious, I asked, "Emma, what's going on?" Emma replied, "Jessica, it looks like Alexander has something he wants to say." Looking at Alexander in his crib, he was staring at Emma. Then Emma said, "This is a secret from Michael," and whispered something in my ear. Upon hearing it, I was so shocked that I lost my words and stared at Michael. Michael, who knew nothing, simply met my gaze. I said to Emma, "But Alexander is just a baby, he can't talk." Emma looked serious and said, "It's true, he's saying he doesn't want to be away from Mommy, and to be careful around Daddy." I couldn't believe what Emma was saying, but her earnest expression and teary eyes made me wonder. After Sophia and Emma left, I asked Michael, "Do you have any secrets from me?" Michael quickly replied, "Why would you say that?" "Just asking." "I have no secrets, you have nothing to worry about," Michael said. "All right, I responded, but despite his words, Michael seemed anxious and his behavior was suspicious. Then he started doing something he never does, changing Alexander's diaper. This made me even more suspicious of him. Is Michael hiding something from me? I couldn't get what Emma had said out of my mind, and I started to doubt Michael. The next day, after Michael left for work, Sophia and Emma suddenly showed up. Sophia apologized. Sorry for coming unannounced. Emma insisted on coming over. Emma's expression was dead serious. It's okay, don't apologize. Emma, welcome. Come on in. As I said this, Emma entered and lovingly gazed at Alexander, who was sleeping in his crib. But while I was preparing drinks in the kitchen, I noticed Emma staring intently at Michael's study. Emma, what's going on? I asked. Jessica, it's hidden here, Emma said, pointing at Michael's bookshelf. Upon closer inspection, I found a hidden diary and some documents tucked between the books. I had no idea Michael kept a diary, but curiosity got the better of me and I read it. The diary revealed a horrifying plan that Michael was secretly plotting. I couldn't believe he was capable of such thoughts. My hands were shaking and I thought maybe Emma's mysterious power was real. When I showed the diary to Sophia, she gripped my hand and said, It's okay, I'll protect you. Sophia then suggested, If you're worried, would it be okay if Emma and I come over when Michael is off work? Tears welled up in my eyes and I felt reassured. Of course, Sophia, thank you. Emma looked up at us, concerned. I guess Emma's mysterious power was real. I'm sorry for doubting it before. Sophia smiled and said, I told you so, but it's good that we found out before anything serious happened. Thanks to Emma, right? Thank you. You're welcome, Emma said, blushing with a shy smile. I felt my love for Michael turning into resentment. I can't let this go. I'll investigate whether what Emma is saying is true, and if it is, I'll get back at him. I decided to confront Michael at a dinner party where both our parents would be present. From then on, Sophia and Emma would visit our home whenever Michael had a day off. At first, Michael was hospitable, but he gradually became irritable whenever Sophia and her family came over. Eventually, despite Sophia and Emma being there, Michael wanted to go out just with me. Sophia, can you watch Alexander while we go on a date? Michael asked, but Sophia declined. Michael, no can do. Alexander cries non-stop without Jessica around. Right, Alexander? Still, Michael persisted. Come on, I think Jessica needs a change of scenery too. Just getting some fresh air could be refreshing. True, but do we need to go out for that? Why not just dip into the garden and get some fresh air? The weather is nice today, it'll feel good. Sophia always managed to counter Michael's arguments without upsetting him, so he had nothing to say. From that point on, Michael became increasingly irritable. Finally, the day of the dinner party arrived. My parents, in-laws, and Sophia's family gathered to have a meal around Alexander. I was busy preparing the dishes I had cooked early in the morning. Look here, Alex. So cute. Michael was filming. Seeing this, my father-in-law murmured, Michael has become a fine father, and my mother-in-law nodded, tears in her eyes. Our son Alexander was also smiling, surrounded by everyone. Then the dinner party began. In the cheerful atmosphere, only Emma was staring at Alexander without eating. Alexander was also staring at Emma, moving his hands and feet. Sophia said to Emma, Here, your favorite apple juice. But Emma didn't respond. Just when I was wondering if Emma was sensing something again, she said to Michael, Do you love money more than Jessica? The room fell silent at Emma's words, and everyone froze, staring at her. Why would you say that, Emma? I asked. Because that's what Alexander is saying, Emma replied, pointing at him. I exchanged glances with Sophia, but everyone else was confused. Michael chuckled and said, Emma, Alexander can't talk yet. You shouldn't lie like that, lightly touching her head. Emma forcibly shook off his hand. It's not a lie. The baby says Daddy's trying to push Mommy from a high place to get money. You mean me? I would never do such a thing. Alexander loves Mommy, so he's saying to stop being Daddy. While everyone was shocked, only Michael turned pale and his lips began to tremble. Stop messing around. Don't say such ridiculous things. Suddenly, Michael slammed the table and yelled. Emma's face tightened and Alexander looked like he was about to cry. I wanted the dinner party to be pleasant, but that seemed impossible now. Michael had lost his temper at Emma's words before I could even bring up the topic. His reaction was like an admission of guilt. With a cold gaze, I confronted Michael. So, you've been cozying up to a woman you met at a club and inflating company expenses, haven't you? Michael looked flustered and said, What are you talking about? I thrust the diary I found on the bookshelf at him. It's all written here. Are you planning to deny it? That's about a subordinate at work. I would never do something so stupid. Sweat was forming on Michael's forehead. Reading someone's diary without permission is an invasion of privacy. I have no reason to be lectured by someone as low as you. What are you trying to say? Still playing dumb? You hatched a terrible plan to fix things before getting caught for embezzling, didn't you? I opened the diary to the page detailing the criminal plan and shoved it in his face. But Michael looked away. What is this? These are notes for a novel I thought of writing. Besides, a diary isn't evidence. Really? Then what do you say to this? I pulled out some documents. You know what this is, right? A life insurance policy you hid, with a $100,000 payout on me. What were you planning? Michael started to panic. That is, you planned to kill me, collect the insurance money, and repay the embezzled funds. Isn't this solid proof? Stuck for words, Michael could only say, No. Emma had secretly told me this when she first met Alexander. Michael wants money and is planning to push you from a high place. From that moment, although I found it hard to believe, I started to suspect Michael. Both sets of parents were frozen in shock. Cornered, Michael had nothing to say and hung his head, but then suddenly fell to his knees, clinging to my leg. Jessica, I'm sorry. Please pay back the money I used. Why should I? Michael looked like he was about to cry. Don't say that. We're married, right? Please, if the company finds out, I'll be fired. How will we live? Michael had trivialized my life for his own benefit. I deeply regretted ever being with such a person. I peeled off the clinging Michael and said, I can't be married to someone as horrifying as you. It's bad for Alexander too, so let's get a divorce. I then thrust a pre-filled divorce application at him. I also demanded a $20,000 settlement and $500 a month in child support. No way! Alexander is still young. Paying that much money forever is a joke. Stop arguing and sign the divorce papers already. Michael was stomping on the ground and wailing like a child. His pathetic display made me feel nauseous. Then my father-in-law, who had been silent until now, shouted, Michael, enough is enough. He probably couldn't stand to see Alexander witnessing such disgrace any longer. You have no right to refuse the divorce and the settlement. Pressured by his father, Michael reluctantly signed the divorce papers. After that, my in-laws apologized to us profusely and took Michael away, almost dragging him. The next day, I submitted the divorce papers to the court. I also contacted Michael's company to report his suspected misuse of company funds. Soon after, his misdeeds came to light, and he was apparently fired. To pay the settlement, child support, and restitution to the company, Michael had to sell his house. Now he's working as a living construction worker from morning till night. I considered reporting this to the police, but in the end, there was no evidence other than what Michael had written in his diary. So I decided to be grateful that, thanks to Emma and Alexander, the incident was prevented. Now I'm back at my parents' home, living a peaceful life with Alexander. Sophia and Emma come to visit Alexander almost every day. Alexander says he's happy to be with mommy all the time. Emma told me this, and it put my mind at ease. I wonder if there's a way of communicating that only Emma and Alexander understand. And is it something that adults can't grasp? While pondering these thoughts, I look at Alexander's joyful smile and vow to continue pouring my love into him and protecting him with my own hands.
Hope, will you marry me? Right now, I'm living the happiest moment of my life. Yes, I'd love to. My name is Hope Collins, just an average office worker in her prime years before marriage. The one proposing to me is Tyler Lee. We've known each other since college, and we're currently living together. A proposal from the man I love, right here in our favorite mom and pop diner. It might not be the typical situation, but I fell in love with his down-to-earth nature. After the proposal, we started talking about meeting each other's families. First, we need to visit your family, Hope. I'm a bit nervous. Tyler starts fidgeting. My family runs a well-known wholesale grocery business. Perhaps he's nervous because of that. What am I supposed to say? Something like, please entrust your daughter to me? The thought of it makes me chuckle. It doesn't suit him at all. I don't like the idea of asking for you, as if you were an object, Hope. I'll think about it. I love this thoughtful side of him. He's a wonderful person who respects, appreciates, and cares about others. Always doing the right thing, as if it were second nature. I'm sure with him, we could build a warm, loving family. However, I did have one worry. It was about my father. Once, when I was on a date with Tyler after his work, we ran into my father. Hope, what are you doing here? Who is this man? When I turned around, my father was standing there, with a few men who appeared to be his colleagues. Dad? Are you working? This is Tyler Lee, my boyfriend. I introduced Tyler to my father, a little shyly. Tyler greeted my father with his usual warm smile. Hello, I am Tyler Lee, and I am dating Hope. Oh, dating my daughter. What do you do for a living? I work at a restaurant chain. Tyler works hard every day at a restaurant, and that day he was still in his work clothes from his shift. A chain restaurant. That explains it. Excuse me, I have a meeting. I'll leave you now. I was concerned because my father scrutinized Tyler from head to toe. His clothes were dirty from work, and his hair was messy because he wraps it in a bandana for hygiene purposes at work. He might not have made a good impression. But I know my father will understand once he gets to know Tyler. He's a wonderfully warm person, more than I deserve. With that in mind, I prepared myself for the day of the formal introduction. And on the day of the marriage proposal, Tyler had reserved a room at a hotel restaurant. Seeing him dressed up in a suit instead of his usual work attire felt fresh. It suits you, I said, laughing, amused by his more sophisticated demeanor. He quickly presented a box of sweets to my family. Hello, these are famous sweets from near my hometown. I thought you might like them. Without giving a second glance at the sweets Tyler offered, my father spoke up. What brings you here today? It was clear from my father's attitude that he was not welcoming Tyler. Yet, Tyler maintained his smile and introduced himself to my father. Yes, I've met you before, sir. I'm Tyler Lee, and I'm dating your daughter, Hope. Today, I am here to discuss our intention to marry. And I would like to spend the rest of my life with Hope, and she feels the same way. Although I am still inexperienced, I wish to build a warm home with Hope. I seek your blessings. Tyler looked my father in the eyes as he said this. I was thrilled, but my father's answer was very disappointing. He sighed heavily before speaking. Ugh, I thought it was just a fling for Hope, but it seems you are serious. Huh? Both Tyler and I were surprised by my father's words. I knew she was dating someone, but I must say, he's not very impressive. My mother chimed in. Mother, that's rude to him. But it's true. Your father spends a lot on me, but from what I've heard from Hope, he doesn't even buy her branded items, does he? I don't care about that because Tyler and I don't care about appearances as long as we're clean and presentable. We're not like you, Mom. A woman's worth is found when she is cherished. You'll understand when you meet someone like your father. Stop. Don't disparage him. The only person I want to be with is Tyler. Well, wait, Hope. Our family owns a wholesale food business. We're well known nationwide. Eventually, we have to groom a son-in-law to become a manager. You seem to be dressed formally today, but the last time I saw you, you looked rather poor. You said you were working at a fast food chain, and honestly, I don't think I could entrust my daughter or company to someone at the bottom, like you. Dad, why are you talking to him like that? You don't even know him. It's okay, Hope. It's true. I haven't thought about taking over your father's company. You realize it's a heavy burden then. My father mocked him, but Tyler answered with a smile. No, it's because I have my own things to do. Huh, I'm sure your obligations are trivial, given your cheap suit. Does my suit look cheap to you? Tyler chuckled. I had been gazing at his suit. Knowing him as I do, I find this look quite precious and delightful. I am a president myself, so I have a discerning eye. You must have had to stretch yourself to afford this hotel's restaurant. It's clear you're struggling. But his words didn't affect Tyler. I see. That's a lesson for me. Still, I want to build a happy home with Hope, my way. We've set up this meeting today to seek your approval. Tyler answered directly, but my father continued to brag. But my daughter already has numerous marriage proposals. Of course, all the suitors are far more accomplished than you. Each one has great wealth and an amazing background, perfectly suited to Hope. So, I cannot agree to this engagement. Aren't you overestimating your superiority over these suitors? Indeed, I had received a few proposals like that, but every time I had turned them down. The suitors my father introduced seemed like typical sons of large corporations. It was obvious that these were strategic marriages. And more importantly, I loved the way Tyler cared for me. I don't compare myself to others to determine who is superior or inferior. But let's be honest, someone like you, with a poor look and only capable of menial jobs, doesn't even enter my consideration. I take pride in my work. That's something I won't let anyone, even you, Mr. Collins, belittle. Pride, you say? Isn't it just some boring job at a chain store? Huh. My father scoffed, but this time, Tyler's face hardened. If that's what you think, then there's no helping it. I didn't want to get personal, but from this moment on, I'm terminating all contracts with your company. Tyler? What does that mean? Before I could ask, my father cut in. So, your store was also sourcing from my company. Then you must realize how great my company is. Anyway, you're just a store clerk. You should keep quiet. Use the ingredients supplied by us and do as your boss says. I believe you'll understand in time. And I'm sure you'll regret your words then. Hope, what about you? I want to be with you, but I can't get along with your parents. I'm grateful to them for raising you, but I can't foresee a friendly relationship with them in the future. Can you make a choice here? Which future do you want to choose? I want to be with you, Tyler. You're more sincere and focused on your goals than someone who judges people by their appearance, like my father. No matter what job Tyler has, my respect for him won't change. I'm happiest when I'm with him. Thank you. With that, he left some money on the table, and we left the restaurant. My parents said something, but I couldn't hear them well. Was Tyler's decision to cut off the contract a reaction to my father's insult of his passion for his job? But it didn't matter. I had decided to stay with Tyler. And then, a few days later, during a day like any other, my cell phone suddenly started ringing loudly. The caller was my father. Hello? I answered. As soon as I did, my father began to yell. Is he there? Who? That guy from the restaurant last time. Is he there? There was an urgency in his voice, but Tyler wasn't here. Tyler's at work, I told him. He had left for work at the usual time and said he'd be home late today. Suddenly, our main client, The restaurant chain Lee House canceled their contract with us. Did he do something? Lee was indeed the restaurant where Tyler worked, but I hadn't heard that he had a position that would allow him to cancel contracts. I don't know anything about it, but didn't he mention something about canceling a contract? Maybe this has something to do with it. Just then, a news flash appeared on the TV. A major restaurant chain has announced a hostile takeover bid against food wholesaler Collins Foods. A hostile takeover? That's a forced buyout. They were trying to forcefully buy out my father's company and take over management. What? So, if this takeover succeeds, you'll no longer be president, right? That's ridiculous. I could tell from the phone that my father was losing his composure. The TV then switched to a news conference. There stood Tyler, looking different in a suit. Lee House has decided to completely cut off our contract with Collins Foods, and at the same time, we will be initiating a hostile takeover bid. Tyler then announced that if successful, the entire executive board would be dismissed. In other words, it suggested that my father would be completely unemployed. The person speaking on the other end of the TV was undoubtedly Tyler, but he didn't look the same, and his position was listed as CEO. CEO? The press conference seemed to go on forever. Who was this person on the TV screen? The press conference ended after several minutes. I hung up the phone on my speechless father and dialed Tyler. Hello? His voice was as casual as ever. That press conference. I couldn't put my question into words. He seemed to understand and laughed on the other end of the phone. Sorry. Did I surprise you? Surprised? Yeah. Well, actually... He explained each point slowly and carefully. He was the son of the president of Lee House and was currently training, gaining experience at the restaurant while serving as CEO. He knew that my father's company was a supplier, but he didn't think it had anything to do with our relationship, so he didn't mention it. He had been considering canceling the contract because he was concerned about the declining quality of the ingredients from my father's company. He had also been considering the idea of having his own procurement route. What made up his mind was my father's offensive remarks, which led him to make the hostile takeover bid. From here on, once the stock acquisition was completed, a shareholders meeting would be held, and his company would audit the management of my father's company. I'm sorry for not telling you. I really found out that your father's company was our supplier only recently. But I didn't want us to feel awkward around each other, so I kept it confidential until it became relevant. He apologized on the other end of the phone. His apology did not change how I felt. So, you were considering me as an individual, weren't you? That's why it doesn't bother me. Still, I was a bit perplexed when he called my suit, tailored in Italy, cheap. I wonder if his discerning eye also has something to do with the declining quality of the supplies, he said, chuckling in a slightly mischievous way. It was probably the most sarcasm the gentle him could muster. And his strategy succeeded. My father was dismissed as the president at the shareholders' meeting. Further investigations revealed that he had been embezzling company funds, getting him in trouble with the police. My mother, who apparently squandered that money, was called in as a witness. Surely they will no longer be able to live as they have been. I do wonder what my mother intends to do, but I can no longer forgive her attitude towards him. I hope she can live within her means. As for my relationship with Tyler, nothing has changed. I met his parents, and they were as calm and composed as him. And their approach towards work and their ideas on building a family were clearly honorable. They apologized for the hostile takeover, but I believe it was a necessary decision. His mother is the epitome of kindness. She treats me dearly, and we've grown so close that we sometimes go out for a sweet treat together. She had never had a daughter to go out with before, and wherever we go, she's just as excited about the food as I am. As for him, the only change is that he now works at the headquarters instead of the store. He's utilizing his experience at the store, working on employee welfare and efficiency in each store. I quit my job to support him. I considered continuing to work, But now I want to make a contribution as a supportive partner, along with his mother. Seeing him leave in a suit every day is endearing in its own way. So I'm sure we'll continue to get along, just as we have been.
Oh, you're late, Emily. I'm starving. Get dinner ready, will ya? The living room looked like it had been ransacked. Lying on the couch like she owned the place, my mother-in-law pushed me to my limit. That's it, I'm done taking this from her. My name is Emily. I met my husband Samuel through work, and we got married. We're both career-driven. We love our jobs so much that we discussed how to balance work and family life before getting married. Once kids are in the picture, priorities shift, and you have to make sacrifices. We chose not to have children so we could focus on our careers and eventually go independent. We share the housework and vowed to support each other. Our jobs keep us busy, but we get along well. We spend our weekends chatting about work or enjoying some leisure time. But there's one yearly event that's pure torture for me: going on vacation with my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Samuel and I agree that family is important. Since he respects my family, I want to do the same for his. I don't mind going on these trips. It's just my mother-in-law who irks me. She just can't stand me. During a family meeting, Samuel explained that we wouldn't be having kids and would continue working. While my father-in-law was understanding, my mother-in-law flew off the handle. How can you marry a woman who doesn't want kids? I've been looking forward to grandchildren. Women should quit their jobs when they get married. Women can't accomplish anything meaningful in the workplace. My father-in-law snapped back. Well, maybe you never accomplished much, but Emily has a promising career. This led to a heated argument between them. Samuel had to step in to break it up, exasperated. Ever since that terrible family meeting, my mother-in-law and I had been on bad terms. The day of the trip had arrived. Feeling downcast, I headed to the meeting spot where I'd see my father-in-law and mother-in-law. Samuel turned to me. Hey, it's all right if you don't want to do this, you know? I replied, no worries, let's go. Our trip with father-in-law and mother-in-law was an overnight stay. We had separate rooms for my in-laws, so we didn't spend the night together. A day or two of discomfort wasn't a big deal. When we arrived at the meeting place, father-in-law greeted us warmly, but mother-in-law seemed constantly upset. It was hard to enjoy the trip while not trying to annoy my visibly irritable mother-in-law. Father-in-law had recently retired from the company where he'd worked for years, although he was rehired for some time. While we caught up about his life post-retirement, mother-in-law only had sarcastic remarks. Any woman who doesn't want kids is worthless. Poor Samuel married to someone like you. You should quit your job and focus on housework, she muttered. Eventually, father-in-law had had enough. What are you grumbling about? We're here to enjoy this trip together. What's there to complain about? You're the one who doesn't understand. She's always working and probably neglecting housework. How can you not feel sorry for Samuel? Exhausted by the sudden argument between father-in-law and mother-in-law, we decided to head to the hotel early. But when we got there and checked our reservation at the front desk, something was wrong. For some reason, only my name was missing, and the room intended for both of us was now a single room for Samuel. Upon inquiring at the front desk, we were told my reservation was canceled a few days earlier. Puzzled, we told father-in-law and mother-in-law what happened. While father-in-law looked confused, mother-in-law flashed a triumphant smile. It's only natural that you don't have a room, Emily. This is a family trip and you're not family. You should just go home, Mother-in-law said. Wait, did you cancel my reservation? Of course, it was me. Father-in-law Samuel and I were all speechless. It was like she didn't even realize the outrageousness of her own words. Sighing, I said, "Oh, all right, then I'll leave since I'm not family." Good, go now. I'm going too. As Samuel stood up to leave with me, Mother-in-law raised her voice. What? Even Father-in-law stood up and said, I'm leaving too, leaving Mother-in-law to distort her face in confusion. Father-in-law apologized to me and gave Mother-in-law a few $100s in cash before packing his bags. Look, you can stay if you want, but I can't enjoy this trip feeling like this. From now on, no more family vacations for me. What are you talking about? If you're leaving, at least let Samuel stay. No way. The way Mom treats Emily is just too much. Plus, I'm tired of all the arguing. So, leaving a deflated mother-in-law behind, the three of us decided to head home. The flight back was the best part of the trip. We all sat together and had a great time. Mother-in-law, stubborn as ever, stayed at the hotel for one more night and spent every last cent Father-in-law had given her. Sure enough, when Mother-in-law got back, she and Father-in-law had a huge fight. According to Samuel, their relationship had been rocky for a while now. Samuel was worried their relationship might get even worse now that Father-in-law had more time at home. That worry turned out to be well-founded a few days later. Samuel went to work and I was enjoying my day off when the doorbell rang. There stood Mother-in-law with a load of bags. What? Mother-in-law? I'm done living with my husband. I'm staying here for a while. Ignoring my shock, Mother-in-law waltzed in and took over the living room. Feeling stuck, I called Samuel at work. Sorry to bother you at work, but Mother-in-law just showed up here. What? Upon hearing my report, Samuel was shocked and tried to call his father, but it seemed like his dad didn't answer the phone. I tried to ask Mother-in-law what happened between her and Father-in-law and suggested they should talk, but she just ignored me. Meanwhile, Mother-in-law lounged on our sofa as if she owned the place. Ugh, what a filthy house. It's all because you work, Emily. Being under the same roof with you is unbearable. Samuel really needs to divorce you soon, she muttered incessantly. I was resigned to her comments, going about my life as usual. She, however, never stopped badgering me. Samuel came home early that day to persuade his mother to leave, but she wouldn't budge. In the end, we couldn't reach Father-in-law and were forced to live with Mother-in-law until we could. The next day, Samuel and I had to work, leaving Mother-in-law behind. Just quit your job already, she said, but I ignored her. When I got home that evening, it looked like a burglar had been through the place. Wow, you're late. Emily, I'm hungry, so get dinner started. Mother-in-law said, lying on the sofa like a couch potato. What happened here? Oh, this mess? Must be because you don't clean. No, that's not the point. Why is everything dumped out of the drawers? You didn't prepare lunch, did you? I was looking for something to eat. I didn't understand how looking for food led her to rummaging through my drawers. I voiced my confusion, but Mother-in-law just ignored me. Realizing that my credit card was missing, my heart sank. Just as I suspected, my mother-in-law had probably stolen it. As I was contemplating how to bring up the issue, Samuel walked through the door. Seeing the state of the house, he immediately started arguing with his mother. I pulled Samuel aside and whispered that my credit card was missing. Rubbing his temples, he sighed, "Give me a break. Look, we can't let her get away with this. She needs to face the consequences." If you say so, leave it to me. Samuel agreed, and so we resolved to make mother-in-law pay for her actions. A few days later, Samuel finally got through to his father, who had been unresponsive because he was traveling with a friend and didn't have his phone. When he returned home, he found a note from my mother-in-law on the table. It read, "I'm still mad about being left behind during the trip. I'm leaving this house." Knowing his father would be coming over, Samuel and I adjusted our work schedules to be home. When we got back, my mother-in-law casually said, "Oh, you're home early." But her expression changed when she saw her husband arrive. "What? Why are you here? Did you come to get me?"
"No, I came to give you this."
He handed her filled out divorce papers. "What?" she exclaimed, visibly shocked.
"Your selfish behavior has only escalated over the years, especially your treatment towards Emily. Why can't you accept the woman your son chose? I've reached my limit. I want a divorce,"
he calmly stated. "Fine, let's get a divorce. I have Samuel, so I don't need you. Emily, bring me a pen. You're so useless." Although annoyed, I handed her a pen as quickly as I could to get her to sign. Once I confirmed that there were no errors in the signed divorce papers, I addressed my irritated mother-in-law. "I have something I want to show you." "What could be so important right now?" she snapped. I opened my laptop in front of her. On the screen was a video of her shopping. "I'm going to zoom in," I told her as I enlarged the image. In her hand was an illustrated credit card. "That credit card isn't yours, is it?" "Well, it's mine."
"You don't have a credit card."
I had already checked with father-in-law, who spoke in a tone of disbelief. You see, mother-in-law had once maxed out a credit card without father-in-law's knowledge, so ever since, father-in-law hadn't let her have a credit card. Mother-in-law loudly snapped at father-in-law. "I'm the one who made it." Samuel coolly retorted,
"Like you can make it. This card is a limited edition, you know. See the artwork? It was only available during a special collaboration."
As Samuel pointed out, this credit card was indeed a limited edition. I loved the artwork on it and had gotten the card when it was in a collaboration. I usually kept it tucked away in a drawer as a kind of collection. So the thing is, mother-in-law had stolen it. We could have suspended the card immediately, but Samuel and I let mother-in-law dig her own grave so we could gather irrefutable evidence. I have time-stamped photos, and when we checked the card's transaction history, it matched the time mother-in-law was out shopping. Seems like you've bought other luxury items too. "It's not true. I didn't steal any credit card." "Really? Then let's submit these photos and the transaction history to the police. We need to find out who misused the card if it wasn't you." "The police?" Mother-in-law's voice cracked in surprise. "Of course, someone stole from us," I said, and mother-in-law started making outrageous claims. "The photo is fake. Who would even take such a picture? Someone just fabricated this. I'm innocent." "I took that photo." "What?" As I've told you before, I'm a journalist. I work as a journalist, capable of tailing people and collecting photographic evidence if needed. Mother-in-law had no chance of escaping with a pro like me on her tail. I operated my laptop and displayed photo after photo of mother-in-law buying various luxury goods. If it wasn't you, the police will figure it out when we present all this evidence. Don't worry, and if police involvement seems unlikely, we'll get a lawyer. I knew that police often don't intervene in civil matters. Them taking action over mother-in-law misusing the credit card without permission was unlikely, but I had used the threat of calling them. However, the idea of consulting a lawyer was real. I was collecting evidence photos to claim damages. Even if you're my daughter-in-law, I'm still your mother. What kind of horrible person takes such pictures of family? Odd, I recall you saying I wasn't family when we went on a trip. Upon hearing my confrontational words, mother-in-law's face turned beet red. In a flustered state, she shoved father-in-law aside and ran out of the house. While I was asking father-in-law, who had fallen, "Are you okay?" Samuel sprinted out of the house. Given that Samuel enjoys running, he's pretty quick on his feet. Mother-in-law had no chance to escape and was caught almost immediately. I informed her that I would report to the lawyer that she had injured father-in-law in addition to running away. Although father-in-law wasn't seriously hurt, he did injure his back and had to go to the hospital. I told mother-in-law we would also be billing her for the medical expenses, to which she tearfully responded, "I don't have that kind of money." I didn't care. Samuel said, "I can't deal with parents like this," and handed mother-in-law a letter of disownment, thus completing her eviction. As promised, we contacted a lawyer we know and initiated the process to cut ties with mother-in-law, including claims for damages and medical expenses. Later, we heard that mother-in-law had moved in with her estranged sister and brother-in-law to borrow money. Although her sister's family runs a business and lent her the money, mother-in-law now works like a horse to pay it back. We ended up living with father-in-law. It wasn't a big deal, but we were concerned about leaving father-in-law alone with his sore back. Father-in-law has been proactive in helping around the house, which has been a great relief to both Samuel and me. Father-in-law's years of work experience also bring valuable advice to our careers. Of course, if father-in-law's health deteriorates, we're prepared to support him fully. Now that mother-in-law is out of the picture, the three of us are living harmoniously, enjoying the return of peaceful days.